Before a bed was a piece of furniture, it was a decision. Someone looked at the ground and chose one place rather than another. A hollow sheltered from wind, a patch away from damp, a corner near the fire, but not close enough for sparks. Then came materials: grass, leaves, reeds, hides, cloth, wood, earth, wool, cotton, or feathers. The history of beds begins when people prepare a surface on which a vulnerable body can rest. That definition is deliberately wide. A mat rolled out at night is a bed. So is a hammock tied between posts, a heated masonry platform, a wooden frame laced with rope, a straw-filled sack, a pile of quilts, a hospital cot, and a foam mattress on a factory-made base. To insist that a true bed must be raised, soft, private, and permanent would make one recent cultural preference the measure of everyone else. Beds answer several problems at once. The sleeper needs support, warmth or cooling, protection from damp, and some defense from insects and animals. A household needs to allocate space. A traveler needs something portable or a host willing to share. A ruler may turn a bed into a stage of authority. A poor worker may own bedding but not a room. Parents decide where infants sleep. Partners negotiate nearness. The sick, the dying, and those giving birth bring care to the sleeping place. Most of this history has vanished. Wood rots. Plant fibers collapse. Textiles are worn until they become rags, then reused again. Archaeology favors stone, metal, pottery, unusual dryness, waterlogging, freezing, and disaster. Museums favor objects that were costly enough to preserve. Written inventories list the possessions of households whose property someone thought worth counting. The poorest bed may disappear precisely because every part of it was ordinary. So we will move carefully. Where a bed survives, we will look at it. Where only microscopic plants remain, we will say what researchers found. Where a room or picture suggests a sleeping arrangement, we will distinguish evidence from a scene imagined to make that evidence human. There will be no single march upward from hard ground to perfect softness. There will be many ways of making the night inhabitable. At Border Cave in South Africa, layers within a rock shelter preserve evidence that pushes prepared bedding far into the human past. Researchers identified grasses used to form comfortable areas for sleeping and work at least 200,000 years ago. The plant traces occur with layers of ash, microscopic evidence, burned material, and the organization of the deposits show repeated human action rather than a random drift of vegetation. The word bed can mislead if it summons a rectangle with legs. These are areas of plant bedding laid on a shelter floor. People also worked upon them. Small fragments of stone, bone, and ochre entered the bedding as daily activity continued. Rest and work were not necessarily divided into modern rooms, and the prepared surface could serve the waking body as well as the sleeping one. Ash beneath fresh grass offers several possible benefits. It creates a cleaner, drier layer. Fine ash can obstruct crawling insects and their breathing openings. Researchers also found plant taxa with aromatic or insect-repelling properties. Though we should be precise, identifying a useful plant in bedding does not let us hear the maker explain why it was chosen. The strongest claim is that people selected, brought, burned, and renewed materials in a maintained living area. Renewal matters. Old bedding accumulates crumbs, tool fragments, parasites, dirt, and bodily traces. Burning a used layer can clean a surface before new grass is placed. Fire, therefore, shaped the bed without becoming a bed warmer in the modern sense. It managed the floor as part of a cycle. Another exceptional site, Ohalo II on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, preserves brush huts from about 23,000 years ago. Waterlogged conditions protected plant remains that would normally disappear. Researchers found a prepared plant bedding area on a hut floor. Its survival is a gift of burial conditions, not evidence that other people lacked bedding. Imagine the work without pretending to reconstruct a specific evening. Suitable plants must be recognized and gathered. Stiff stalks may form a lower layer. Softer leaves may touch the body. Damp material would chill, so timing matters. The bundle has bulk. Carrying it costs energy. The reward is insulation from ground that draws heat away, cushioning over stone, and a surface that can be renewed. A sleeping body loses heat by conduction to what it touches, convection to moving air, radiation to cooler surroundings, and evaporation. Bedding changes these exchanges. Damperation. A hide resists wind and some damp. Elevation allows air beneath, useful in heat, but chilly in cold. No material is simply comfortable. It is comfortable in relation to weather and body. Night also changes danger. Humans asleep cannot watch continuously. A group may place sleepers, fires, tools, dogs, or entrances in ways that provide warning. Children sleep near caregivers, the injured need protection. We can infer that safety influenced arrangements, but the exact order of bodies is rarely preserved. Archaeology gives us a floor, not a bedtime conversation. For mobile people, a heavy bedstead is a burden. Bedding must justify every step of carrying. A hide already obtained through hunting or herding can serve as cover, pad, garment, wrapping, and sleeping surface. A woven mat can roll. A stuffed bag can be emptied, with its case carried onward and filled again at the destination. Mats are among the great, underestimated technologies of sleep. Reeds, rushes, grasses, palm leaves, bark fibers, and split cane become ordered surfaces through plaiting or weaving. The pattern distributes weight and keeps the body away from grit. A mat defines personal or household space without a wall. By day it is rolled, revealing the floor for work. In hot, humid places, too much insulation traps heat and perspiration. A thin, breathable mat can be more comfortable than a deep mattress. In dry, cold air, layered skins and wool are valuable. Where snakes, scorpions, damp, or household animals are concerns, a raised platform may help. Where earthquakes or low ceilings shape houses, sleeping near the floor may be sensible. Headrests appear in many parts of Africa and in ancient Egypt, East Asia, and the Pacific. A small wooden, ceramic, or stone support beneath neck or head can protect an elaborate hairstyle, improve airflow, or suit a side-sleeping posture. To someone accustomed to a soft pillow, it may look severe. Comfort is learned partly through habit, and the headrest works with the rest of the sleeping surface. Portable bedding also has a social life. A traveler brings a blanket but depends on a host's floor. A herder shares a shelter with kin. A soldier carries a role that signals rank and regulation. Refugees take what they can lift. The difference between owning a bed and having a place to sleep becomes visible whenever people move. Ancient Egyptian beds are unusually present in museum collections because dry conditions and funerary practices preserved wood that would vanish elsewhere. Their survival is precious and biased. Tomb furniture belongs disproportionately to people with resources, and an object placed with the dead may carry meanings beyond ordinary household use. Surviving bedsteads show sophisticated joinery. Wooden side rails and end rails meet through fitted joints. Legs sometimes take the form of animal feet. A flexible sleeping surface could be woven from plant fiber or leather and stretched within the frame. Many beds slope slightly, and a footboard can help keep bedding or sleeper from sliding. The British Museum holds beds and fragments with bovine form supports. Animal legs do more than hold weight. They turned furniture into an image of power, protection, or cosmological association, depending on context. Yet it is wise not to assign one symbolic meaning to every hoof. Forms persisted across centuries and could be both structural convention and sign. A raised frame separates the sleeper from dust and some crawling creatures while allowing air beneath. It also requires timber, tools, joinery, cordage, and maintenance. In a land where high-quality wood was valuable, the quantity and species of timber mattered. Craftspeople selected pieces, cut joints, drilled holes, shaped legs, and tensioned the support. Bedding itself is less visible than the frame. Linen, sheets, and covers required flax cultivation, retting, spinning, weaving, bleaching, sewing, washing, and repair. A clean white textile condensed agricultural and domestic labor. Pillows might not resemble a modern soft rectangle. Headrests offered another solution. Images show beds and scenes of birth, illness, sex, death, and the divine. Funerary beds supported mummification or burial display. Household beds held ordinary sleep that artists rarely considered worth recording. The same form could cross practical and ritual worlds. Ordinary Egyptians may have slept on mats, simple platforms, or modest frames that did not survive. We should not furnish every ancient house with a museum masterpiece. The correct lesson is narrower, raised, crafted bedsteads existed early, and their design already joined engineering, status, bodily habit, and belief. In ancient Mesopotamian texts and images, beds appear in households, temples, literature, medicine, and law. Wooden textiles were valuable. Terms translated as bed can overlap with couch or sleeping place. Inventories reveal goods and obligations more readily than nightly posture. Divine beds in temples could be prepared as part of ritual service. Royal beds signaled order and legitimacy. Domestic beds belonged to marriage, inheritance, and fertility, as well as rest. When a text uses a bed metaphorically, it tells us that audiences understood the object's emotional and legal force, even if it does not reveal construction. Greek kleini and Roman couches supported reclining at meals as well as sleep. The boundary between bed and sofa was porous. A framed surface with woven straps and cushions could move between uses or be assigned to a chamber. Elite dining turned reclining into a performance of citizenship, gender, and rank. Most people did not live inside the painted banquet. Enslaved workers prepared rooms, beat cushions, washed textiles, carried lamps, guarded doors, and slept in conditions largely absent from art. Urban tenants crowded into rooms where furniture had to compete with storage and work. Soldiers, travelers, and laborers improvised. Roman beds survive as metal fittings, carbonized wood, representations, and rare complete forms. Frames could be wood, bronze, or combinations, with turned or cast legs. Mattresses were stuffed with materials such as wool, reeds, or straw according to means and availability. Textiles proclaimed wealth because dyes, fine fibers, and labor were costly. Medical writers discussed sleep in relation to digestion, season, age, and illness. They did not know modern sleep stages or microbes. Advice about posture, timing, air, and bedding belonged to humoral and environmental theories. Some observations may feel familiar. Their explanatory system was different. The Roman bedroom was not necessarily a private sanctuary. Elite houses had graded access, and slaves crossed spaces to serve. A chamber could host business or visitors. Curtains and doors controlled sight without establishing modern privacy. The poorest sleeper might occupy a shop, corridor, shared rental, or place near work. Across South Asia, the charpoy, or woven bedstead, offers a design of remark. 4 legs support a wooden frame. laced with rope, cord, or woven tape. The tensioned surface yields under the body and allows air to move beneath. Damaged weaving can be tightened or replaced without rebuilding the frame. The bed is light enough to move. It can stand in a room during cold or rain, then travel to a courtyard, roof, veranda, or shade tree. The sleeping place follows the household's daily geography. During intense heat, outdoor air may be preferable to an enclosed room. At dawn, the charpoy becomes a seat, work surface, or place for conversation. Materials reflect local economies. Frames use available wood. Webbing may be cotton, jute, kauai, date palm fiber, leather, synthetic cord, or reclaimed material. The maker must understand tension. Too loose, and the body sinks awkwardly. Too tight or uneven. Reweaving is maintenance visible to neighbors and children. Cotton transformed bedding across a much wider world, and South Asian cultivators, spinners, weavers, dyers, printers, merchants, and enslaved or coerced workers occupied history. A cotton sheet seems simple only after its labor disappears. Fine painted and printed cottons became globally desired, provoking imitation, trade restrictions, and industrial competition in Europe. Indian courtly beds could be elaborate, with carved frames, precious textiles, canopies, bolsters, and attendants. Rural and urban poor slept on mats, simple cots, floors, or shared surfaces. Colonial observers often described local sleeping as either picturesque simplicity or evidence of inferiority. Their accounts must be read against racial hierarchy and the comfort assumptions they carried. Mosquito netting creates a room within a room. Fine mesh separates sleeper from insects while allowing some airflow. Its effectiveness depends on intact fabric and proper closure. Nets require fiber, weaving, washing, and repair. And access has never been equal. In malaria regions, modern insecticide-treated nets add a public health technology that should not be projected backward. The charpoy also appears in hospitals, barracks, roadside stops, and relief camps because it is ventilated, repairable, and relatively portable. A familiar domestic form crosses into institutions, yet the experience changes when the sleeper chooses a courtyard bed and when an authority assigns a cot in a row. East Asian sleep cannot be condensed into one floor mat. Northern China, Korea, Japan, and many neighboring regions develop distinct ways of linking the body to architecture. Climate, fuel, floor construction, furniture tradition, and household custom produce different solutions. In northern China, the kang is a raised masonry platform heated by flues carrying warm gases from a stove or fire. It can occupy much of a room and support sleeping, sitting, eating, childcare, and work. Heat stored in masonry radiates slowly. The platform is not a mattress. Mats and quilts mediate its hard, warm surface. The kang joins cooking and heating. Fuel burned for meals can warm the platform, making scarce energy serve more than one purpose. Flue design must draw smoke safely and distribute heat. Ash requires clearing. Cracks and poor ventilation can create danger. Domestic architecture becomes a thermal machine maintained through daily labor. Status appears even on a shared platform. The warmest place may belong to an elder or honored guest. Family members arrange themselves by age, gender, or need. A large surface encourages co-sleeping, but household rules decide who lies where. Traditional Chinese canopy or alcove beds could be highly enclosed, carved structures with curtains, shelves, and textile panels. Rather than merely holding a sleeper, an elite bed created a small architectural chamber inside a larger room. It displayed dowry wealth and craft. The carved enclosure also limited drafts and sight. Korean ondol heating sends hot gases beneath a masonry floor, warming a broader room surface. Bedding can be spread on the heated floor and folded away during the day. The floor therefore alternates between sleep, sitting, eating, and social life. Removing shoes and maintaining clean floor surfaces are connected to this bodily use. In Japan, tatami mats organize rooms through modular dimensions and a resilient plant fiber surface. Futon bedding can be laid out at night, aired in suitable weather, folded and stored by day. This flexibility releases the room for other activities. It also creates labor. Bedding is carried, beaten or aired, covered, washed and protected from damp. Tatami and futon changed across time and class. It is incorrect to imagine every Japanese person in every period sleeping in a standardized modern tatami room. Elite architecture, urban tenancy, rural houses, inns, and 20th century apartments differed. Beds in the Western style entered alongside military, institutional, medical, and consumer changes, then coexisted with floor bedding. The comparison reveals no universal relationship between privacy and a permanent bed. Bedding put away can create daytime space in a small home. A permanent bed reserves floor area and makes the bedroom more specialized. Each arrangement distributes convenience differently across night and day. Africa returns in this history not only as the site of very ancient grass bedding, but as a continent of continuing and changing material traditions. Ecologies range from humid coasts to highlands and deserts. Mats, hides, wooden frames, earth platforms, woven beds, headrests, blankets, and imported mattresses all belong somewhere, but never everywhere. Pastoral mobility favors bedding that packs with household goods. Hides offer insulation and durability. Wooden headrests protect hairstyles and can be carried. In settled compounds, raised earth or wooden platforms separate sleepers from damp floors. Woven mats create clean surfaces and can be renewed from local plants. In hot regions, airflow is comfort. A deep feather mattress designed for a cold European chamber may trap heat and moisture. Colonial officials who treated their own bed as inherently superior confused climate-specific habit with civilization. At the same time, imported blankets and iron frames could be eagerly adopted when people found them useful or prestigious. Adoption is not surrender. Users assign new meanings. Sleeping arrangements reflect household form. Children may sleep with siblings or caregivers. Guests receive spaces according to kinship and honor. Gender and age can organize rooms or compounds. Livestock protection, night work, and fear of violence affect where bodies rest. Ethnographic observation captures one period, not an unchanging tribal custom. Colonial labor systems created barracks, mine compounds, mission dormitories, prisons and plantations where authorities dictated beds. Narrow bunks and mats arranged in rows made workers countable. Ventilation, crowding, disease and separation from family were political conditions presented as housing design. Missionaries and doctors often linked raised beds with hygiene, sometimes for valid reasons of damp or vectors, and sometimes through cultural prejudice. A frame can help with cleaning and clinical access. It can also be expensive, unsuitable, or unnecessary. Public health works best when mechanism is separated from status symbolism. Modern African cities contain the same layered markets seen elsewhere. Locally made wooden frames, metal cots, foam blocks, imported spring mattresses, mats, sofas used for sleep, and crowded rented rooms. Rural-urban migration changes household size and available floor area. The global bed industry meets local heat, income, and custom. The hammock suspends the sleeper rather than lifting a rigid platform. Woven or netted fiber curves under the body, allows air to circulate, and stays above damp ground. It can be rolled and carried. In tropical parts of the Americas and Caribbean, indigenous hammock traditions were highly developed before European invasion. The English word came through Spanish from a Caribbean indigenous term, but one borrowed word cannot encompass every local form. Fibers, weave, width, hanging angle, and use vary. A broad hammock can support diagonal sleeping and a flatter posture. A narrow naval hammock behaves differently. European colonizers quickly recognized practical advantages aboard ships. Hammocks used less floor space than fixed bunks, moved with the ship, and could be stowed. Naval adoption carried an indigenous technology into imperial warfare and trade, while often erasing its makers. On land, the hammock can shift between sleep, rest, childcare, sociability, and work. It belongs under roofs, on verandas, and between trees or posts. Its gentle movement comforts some sleepers and unsettles others. Habit teaches the body how to enter, lie, turn, and rise. Other indigenous American sleeping surfaces included mats, raised platforms, hides, robes, brush, and built benches adapted to environments from Arctic cold to tropical forest. Colonial descriptions often use one generic word where specific materials and social rules mattered. Archaeology again favors the hearth and post hole over the vanished blanket. In the North American plains, portable hide lodges and robes supported mobile life around bison and seasonal movement. In Arctic regions, insulating skins and shared body warmth addressed severe cold. Snow itself insulates a shelter when shaped correctly. A raised European bed would not automatically improve such a thermal system. Colonization violently disrupted sleep. Enslaved Africans in the Americas endured cramped ships, plantation quarters, surveillance, and inadequate bedding. Indigenous people were forced into missions, boarding schools, reservations, and labor regimes. A history that celebrates furniture while ignoring who was denied safe rest would mistake an object catalog for human experience. In medieval Europe, the word bed might refer to the frame, the mattress, the textiles, or the whole ensemble. Many people slept on pallets, benches, chests, mats, straw ticks, or simple frames. The elaborate carved bed of a film set is an unreliable guide to a peasant house. A tick was a strong fabric case filled with straw, chaff, flock, wool, feathers, straw compresses and breaks, so it must be stirred, replaced, or supplemented. The case itself is valuable because woven cloth requires labor. Emptying and refilling lets a household renew the interior while preserving the cover. Beds are often shared. Family members, servants, travelers, and even relative strangers might lie together according to rules of status, gender, familiarity, and available space. Sharing conserved heat and expensive bedding. It also reduced privacy and could spread lice, fleas, bedbugs, skin infections, and respiratory illness. Hospitality required a host to find a place for the guest, not always a separate chamber. Inns put multiple travelers in a bed or room. Etiquette governed clothing, position, and behavior. A traveler's expectation of solitude would have been an expensive demand. In great households, bed curtains created a smaller climate. Fabric reduced drafts and held warmth near the body. It also screened sight in rooms entered by servants and visitors. Curtains displayed expensive weaving, embroidery, dye, and heraldry. They could harbor dust and insects, and they required beating, brushing, airing, repair, and seasonal storage. The canopy did not arise simply to stop debris falling from a filthy roof, a popular story repeated without adequate evidence. Bed hangings make sense as thermal, visual, and ceremonial architecture. In some rooms, a tester supported curtains without posts. In others, posts rose from the frame. A lord moving between estates could send hangings, mattresses, and furnishings ahead. The chamber was assembled around the person. Portable textile wealth mattered more than a fixed wooden frame that local staff could provide. The bed also received legal and emotional meaning. It appeared in dowries, wills, gifts, debts, and inheritance disputes. A best bed could be one of the household's greatest assets. Passing it to a spouse or child transferred cloth, warmth, status, and memory at once. Birth and death brought witnesses to bed. Women labored in chambers arranged for warmth, support, ritual, and female company. The sick received visitors. A ruler's rising or dying could become public business. The bed was intimate without always being private. By early modern England and much of Europe, an affluent bedstead dressed with mattress, feather bed, bolsters, pillows, sheets, blankets, quilts, coverlets, valances, and curtains could be the most expensive ensemble in a home. The wood visible today was only a skeleton. Contemporary observers saw a mountain of textiles. Each layer had a job. A firm mattress supported the feather bed. The feather bed offered softness and insulation. Sheets protected harder-to-clean fillings from sweat and skin oils. Blankets tracked air. A decorative cover protected and displayed. Bolsters supported a range of sleeping and sitting postures. Beds were not universally short because people slept sitting upright. Surviving frames may be missing rails or textiles, and people's heights varied. Large bolsters did encourage a propped posture, useful for reading, receiving visitors, illness, reflux, or habitual comfort. But there is no single medieval or early modern sleeping angle. Holly Fletcher's research on early modern English bedding shows an ecology broader than straw and feathers. Poorer people used thistledown, fen down, chaff, flock, and animal hair according to local access. Regulators worried that upholsterers might hide dirty or inferior material inside a sealed tick. Bedding touched the vulnerable sleeping body, so filling was treated as a health matter. Feathers required collection, sorting, washing, or preparation, an enormous quantity. Down offered light insulation. Coarser feathers added structure. Wool flock could be new or recovered, which raised fears about contamination and fraud. Straw was cheaper and renewable, but noisy, prickly, and perishable. Making the bed was physical work. Feather beds needed shaking and turning. Straw needed stirring. Linen required washing, boiling, beating, drying, ironing or smoothing, folding, and mending. Curtains came down for cleaning. Bed ropes loosened and were retensioned. The smooth bed at night was the temporary outcome of labor, much of it performed by women and servants. Laundry depended on water, fuel, lye or soap, weather, tubs, lines, and space. Clean white linen demonstrated resources because it consumed all of these. The phrase clean sheets can sound morally simple while hiding smoke, reddened hands, heavy wet cloth, and hours at the fire. The Great Bed of Ware, made around 1590 to 1600, and now at the Victoria and Albert Museum, is famous for its exceptional size and association with an inn. Travelers carved initials into it, and writers mentioned it. Its fame proves exception, not normality. It is useful as evidence of bed tourism, craftsmanship, and public reputation, not as the standard Tudor bed. At a Baroque court, the most important bed might scarcely be used for ordinary sleep. A state bed stood on a platform, beneath rich hangings, sometimes beyond a balustrade. Its arrangement echoed a throne. Access to the chamber expressed rank. The rulers waking and retiring could become ceremony. Chosen attendants approached in order. Clothing, prayer, medicine, petitions, and conversations surrounded the bed. The body of the monarch was both human and political, and the chamber made that contradiction visible. Textile expenditure was immense. Silk, velvet, metallic thread, lace, fringe, feathers, carved wood, and gilding brought together workers across regions. The glamorous object depended on silkworm cultivation, mining, dyeing, spinning, weaving, embroidery, carving, transport. Court etiquette did not mean the ruler lacked private sleeping arrangements elsewhere. A ceremonial bedchamber and an actual night's rest could diverge. Inventories and room names must therefore be read with accounts of use. The state bed made hierarchy spatial. A visitor stopped at one threshold, a courtier at another. A servant passed behind the curtain. Privacy was not a simple closed door. It was a graded privilege managed by architecture and rank. Beds gather what people shed: warmth, carbon dioxide, skin cells, hair, sweat, and odor. They offer seams, cracks, fibers, and darkness. Parasites need no invitation. Fleas, lice, mites, mosquitoes, and bedbugs each follow different biology, so old references to vermin cannot always be assigned to one species. Bedbugs are blood-feeding insects adapted to remain near hosts' resting places. They hide in furniture joints, wall cracks, textiles, and belongings, then emerge to feed. They travel when infested goods and luggage move. An immaculate room can acquire them. Dirt is not their cause. Historical households attacked pests by dismantling beds, pouring hot water into joints, exposing components to sun, beating textiles, applying plant substances or chemicals, sealing cracks, and replacing fillings. Some treatments were ineffective or toxic. The removable bed curtain and refillable tick helped cleaning, but their seams also supplied refuge. Modern medical reviews find no established routine role for bedbugs in transmitting human disease, but their effects are real. Bites itch. Scratching can damage skin. Knowledge of infestation produces anxiety, vigilance, and lost sleep. The social stigma can be as punishing as the insect. In the 20th century, broad insecticide use greatly reduced bedbug populations in some wealthy countries. Then resistance, travel, trade, and changes in pest control contributed to resurgence. The problem never vanished globally. Blaming an affected sleeper conceals housing inequality and the need for coordinated treatment. Mosquitoes create a different problem because the bed is only a feeding location, not necessarily their harbor. Screens, nets, smoke, airflow, drainage, and housing design reduce contact in different ways. Insecticide-treated nets are a modern intervention with strong evidence against malaria where used correctly. Decorative canopy curtains should not be confused with them. By the eve of industrial mass production, the bed had already taken almost every structural form it would need: ground layer, mat, hammock, platform, heated floor, woven frame, enclosed chamber, folding cot, and upholstered mattress. What industry changed was not the invention of comfort itself. It changed materials, scale, standardization, distribution, and the authority of the manufacturer. The older bed was often locally legible. A user knew who wove the rope or filled the tick. Repairs happened in the household or neighborhood. The industrial bed gradually arrived through catalogs, patents, factories, railways, advertisements, department stores, hospitals, and hotels. Comfort became a branded promise. The history of beds changes when another person controls the sleeper's time. Under slavery, rest could be shortened, interrupted, watched, and made conditional. Plantation inventories may list bedsteads in an owner's house while recording the people who made those beds as property. The contrast is not incidental. Luxury and exhaustion belong to the same system. Sleeping conditions for enslaved people varied across the Atlantic world and within each plantation, mine, town, ship, and household. Cabins might contain rough wooden bunks, pallets, mats, blankets, or bedding assembled from sacks and plant material. Domestic servants could sleep near the rooms they served, with less separation between labor and night. Field workers sometimes built or improved their own furniture within severe constraints. Archaeology of quarters finds post holes, hearths, ceramics, buttons, beads, animal bones, and personal objects more often than intact beds. A rectangular stain or nail pattern may suggest a frame, but certainty depends on context. Oral histories recorded after emancipation preserve memories while also reflecting the long interview conditions, and individual experience. A blanket was warmth, property, and sometimes an issued ration. Its quality signaled how little an enslaver chose to spend. Coarse fabric wore against skin. Damp bedding in a poorly built cabin increased misery. Yet people washed, patched, shared, decorated, and arranged sleeping spaces to create family life under surveillance. On slave ships, the language of a bed almost fails. Captive Africans were confined on platforms or decks with space calculated for cargo density. Lying down was imposed as packing, not offered as rest. Heat, filth, disease, terror, chains, and violence destroyed the safety that a sleeping place should provide. Ship plans that depict orderly rows turn suffering into geometry. After emancipation, access to safe sleep remained shaped by land, wages, racial violence, tenancy, and segregation. Sharecroppers and labor migrants reused sacks, straw ticks, quilts, and handmade frames. Quilt making transformed scraps and purchased cloth into warmth, design, memory, and sometimes community exchange. It should not be reduced to a single coded folklore story. Documentary evidence for supposed universal secret quilt codes is weak. The bed in an enslaver's house also demanded coerced domestic work. Someone aired feather beds, emptied chamber pots, warmed sheets, washed linen, mended curtains, and remained available when the household called at night. The private chamber of one person was a workplace for another. For much of history, travel meant sleeping within another household or among strangers. Monasteries, caravanserais, inns, post houses, temples, hospices, and private hosts offered floors, platforms, benches, stables, rooms, and beds according to local custom and the visitor's rank. An inn bed was not automatically private. Guests shared a chamber and sometimes a mattress. They slept dressed or partly dressed, kept money close, and worried about theft, fleas, fire, and unfamiliar companions. Etiquette could make proximity manageable, but travelers' complaints show how often it failed. Innkeepers managed turnover before standardized laundry or rapid mechanical washing. Sheets might be aired, changed, or left longer than a guest wished. Mattresses and curtains harbored insects. Beds were assets expected to earn repeatedly, so repair and cleaning competed with occupancy. The great bed of Ware became famous within this world. Its enormous frame drew travelers and literary notice. The initials cut into it suggest guests wanted proof of encounter. The bed became destination and advertisement. An early example of lodging transformed into story. Caravanserais along routes in Western, Central, and Southern Asia organized safety for merchants, animals, and goods. Travelers might spread their own bedding on raised platforms or in cells around a courtyard. The building offered walls, water, and social order more than a dressed private bed. Portable quilts and rugs made the sleeping place personal. Japanese inns developed their own routines of tatami rooms, futon bedding, bathing, meals, and service. Bedding brought out after the evening meal changes a reception room into a sleeping room. The guest experiences care through timing and presentation rather than permanent furniture. Modern hotels reversed the emphasis. The bed became the fixed center of a private rented room. White linens signaled cleanliness because stains were visible and laundering could be industrialized. Standard sizes helped hotels purchase frames, sheets, and mattresses in quantity. A familiar bed promised consistency to travelers removed from home. That promise rests on hidden labor. Housekeepers lift heavy mattresses, strip linen, inspect stains, remake corners, clean bathrooms, and meet strict room quotas. Laundry workers handle heat, chemicals, wet weight, and repetitive motion. The serene hotel photograph excludes the workers whose bodies are strained to make the bed appear untouched. Hospitality also carries danger and exclusion. Lodging houses refuse guests by race, caste, religion, gender, disability, or reputation. Segregation guides and mutual aid networks help travelers locate safer beds. A history of hotels is therefore a history of who was allowed to rest without fear. Institutions arrange beds in rows because rows make bodies visible and countable. The form appears in barracks, ships, prisons, orphanages, boarding schools, hospitals, dormitories, camps, and workhouses. Each institution differs, but the repeated geometry serves inspection, circulation, and economy of space. Military cots fold, stack, and travel. They need not be comfortable for years. They must be standardized, cheap, and quickly deployed. A soldier learns the width allotted, the required arrangement of blanket and kit, and the hour when lying down is permitted. Making the bed becomes drill. Naval hammocks used vertical space efficiently. Slung close together, they moved with a ship and could be stowed to clear decks. Each sailor's hammock was personal equipment within rigid order. In combat, rolled hammocks could be placed as limited protection around exposed areas. Below deck, air, odor, damp, and noise made sleep difficult regardless of the hammock's ingenuity. Prison beds embody punishment theories. A hard plank, thin mattress, solitary cell, or crowded dormitory can be justified as discipline, economy, security, or reform. Sleep deprivation may result from lights, noise, checks, fear, temperature, and inadequate bedding. The bed is present while rest is withheld. In 19th century workhouses, separation by sex and category broke families into regulated wards. Uniform beds and bedding erased domestic identity. Cleanliness could improve compared with desperate housing outside, yet the institution deliberately made relief undesirable. Order was moral theater. Boarding schools and residential institutions imposed sleep schedules on children. Indigenous children taken to colonial schools lost family sleeping customs, along with language, hair, clothing, and food. Dormitory beds made assimilation spatial. Night could bring loneliness, punishment, abuse, or quiet exchanges among children, preserving connection. Refugee and disaster shelters reuse the row because speed matters. Folding cots raise people above a gymnasium floor and create a minimum territory. Screens may add privacy. Families attempt to cluster. Lights remain on for safety. A temporary bed offers necessary rest while reminding the sleeper that home is inaccessible. The row is not inherently cruel. In a well-run field hospital or emergency shelter, it enables care, cleaning, and evacuation. Its meaning depends on choice, duration, staffing, distance, privacy, and power. Identical frames can support rescue or confinement. Hospitals changed the bed from household possession into clinical equipment. Earlier hospitals, charitable institutions, and infirmaries sometimes placed more than one patient in a bed when resources were scarce. As medical organization changed, single-patient beds, spacing, washable surfaces, and ward ventilation became part of reform. A hospital bed must do what a household bed rarely does. It must let caregivers approach from both sides. It must move through doors and corridors. Its height should reduce bending. Sections may raise head, knees, or feet. Rails can prevent falls but also restrain. Wheels require reliable brakes. Surfaces must withstand cleaning. 19th century nursing reform emphasized fresh air, cleanliness, spacing, drainage, and observation. These reforms were shaped by contemporary disease theories, including miasma, and later by germ theory. Even when explanation changed, some practices, clean linen, hand hygiene, less crowding remained valuable. Changing a bed around a patient became a trained skill. The nurse rolls the person safely, protects tubes and wounds, removes soiled cloth without spreading contamination, places smooth linen to reduce pressure, and restores warmth. The ordinary domestic task becomes clinical choreography. Long immobility creates pressure injuries when tissue is compressed and blood flow is impaired. Turning schedules, support surfaces, nutrition, moisture management, and movement reduce risk. Air, gel, water, and alternating pressure mattresses were developed to distribute load. No mattress removes the need for attentive care. Adjustable beds also affect breathing, digestion, swelling, and comfort. Mechanical cranks gave way to electric motors and electronic controls. Intensive care beds can weigh patients, detect exit, rotate surfaces, and connect to alarms. The bed becomes a sensor platform within a network. Technology can distance as well as assist. An alarm substitutes for presence only imperfectly. Rails intended for safety can entrap. A powerful mattress system is useless if staff cannot maintain it. The patient experiences the bed continuously, while designers and buyers may judge it through specifications. Birth moved from household beds into hospital beds in many societies during the 19th and 20th centuries, though timing varied. The obstetric bed allows clinical access and positional adjustment, but it can privilege the caregiver's convenience over the laboring person's movement. Contemporary birth practice debates: upright, side-lying, squatting, water, home, and hospital positions, showing that bed design shapes bodies rather than merely receiving them. Death moved too. More people died in institutions, and the hospital bed replaced the household bed as a final place. Families negotiated visiting rules and machines. Hospice sought to restore comfort, familiarity, and control. The bed at life's end remains both equipment and emotional ground. Industrial metalworking changed bedsteads during the 18th and 19th centuries. Iron frames could be produced in repeated components, shipped, assembled, and cleaned differently from carved wood. Advertisers claimed that metal offered fewer hiding places for vermin, though joints, bedding, and walls still provided refuge. Cast iron takes a mold well but can be brittle. Wrought iron can be shaped and joined. Tubular steel later reduces weight while maintaining strength. Brass elements add shine and status. Factory finishes protect against rust and introduce color. The metal bed entered hospitals, military quarters, institutions, hotels, and households. Its visual language could be plain and sanitary or ornate with scrollwork, knobs, and painted decoration. Industrial production did not eliminate style. It multiplied styles for different markets. Metal frames also separated manufacture from local repair. A carpenter could replace a wooden rail. A proprietary metal fitting might require a dealer's part. Standardization brings interchangeability when standards hold and obsolescence when they change. Iron did not instantly displace wood. Wooden bedsteads remained familiar, warm to the touch, repairable, and prestigious. Many beds combined wood, metal fasteners, woven supports, and later springs. Households bought new components while retaining old textiles. Factories reorganized labor. Foundry workers handled heat and fumes. Metal polishers inhaled dust. Children and women worked in textile and mattress shops under wage systems that undervalued skill. A finished white enamel frame advertised hygiene while its production exposed workers to industrial hazards. Catalogs made distant beds imaginable. Drawings showed frames in ideal rooms, assigned model numbers and prices, and offered delivery by rail. Rural customers measured doors and ordered. The local bed became part of a national consumer language. Installment credit placed better beds within reach while tying households to payments. Furniture stores staged complete bedrooms, bed, dresser, washstand, wardrobe as coordinated identities. The bedroom became something to purchase as a set. Before metal springs, flexibility came from rope, leather thongs, woven cane, wooden slats, stuffed material, or the curve of a hammock. Springs offered a new way to store and release energy beneath the body. Patterns multiplied, each claiming better support, silence, ventilation, or durability. Early arrangements included coiled springs tied together beneath upholstered layers and woven wire stretched across a frame. Individual coils could lean, squeak, break, or press upward. Skilled workers tied coils with cord to coordinate their movement. Edge supports attempted to keep a sleeper from rolling off. The inner spring mattress placed coils inside a fabric case with padding above. Bundle-type hourglass coils linked by helical wires became common in mass production. Later offset coils, continuous wire units, and individually pocketed coils changed how motion traveled and how the surface conformed. Springs allowed manufacturers to sell comfort as engineering. Advertisements drew cross-sections invisible to the buyer. Layers of ticking felt, cotton, hair, insulator pads, and shining steel. The unseen interior became a scientific-looking landscape. Yet spring count alone never guaranteed comfort. Wire gauge, coil shape, connection, upholstery, foundation, body size, sleep position, and wear all matter. Marketing reduced a complex system to a number because a number is easy to compare. Box springs or sprung foundations added elasticity beneath the mattress and raised it from the floor. Later, rigid foundations retained the familiar height while supporting mattresses designed not to need a second spring layer. The term box spring persisted even when the box contained no springs. Squeaks became part of domestic comedy and sexual privacy. A noisy frame announced movement through thin walls. Tightening bolts, oiling joints, and replacing broken components were acts of maintenance and discretion. Mattress factories enclosed risk. Loose cotton and fiber created dust and fire hazards. Needles, tufting tools, wire, glue, and heavy lifting injured workers. Laws about sanitation responded in part to reuse of filthy filling, but enforcement varied. The word mattress entered European languages through Arabic, reflecting contact with traditions of cushions and floor bedding, though etymology does not mean every modern mattress has one origin. A mattress is essentially a yielding layer contained or organized so it can support a body. Its possible interiors are remarkably diverse. Straw is hollow, available after grain harvest, and inexpensive. Fresh straw traps air and smells of the field. With use it breaks, flattens, absorbs moisture, and becomes dusty. Annual or seasonal replacement ties the bed to harvest. The tick can be washed while empty. Horsehair and other animal hairs form springy, breathable filling when cleaned and curled. Hair resists clumping better than some plant fibers, but requires collection, sorting, washing. Fresh, elite upholstery created demand networks reaching stables, slaughterhouses, and workshops. Wool insulates even when somewhat damp and can be carded into resilient bats. It compresses and can harbor moths. Cotton feels soft and can be layered, but dense cotton compacts and absorbs moisture. Kapok, a silky plant fiber, offers light, buoyant filling. It is difficult to contain and highly flammable. Feather beds place soft, loose filling above a firmer base. Down clusters trap air. Feathers with quills add support but can poke through ticking. Ethical and hygiene concerns now shape feather markets. While historically the central questions were access, cleanliness, species, and quantity. Natural latex comes from rubber tree sap, processed into resilient foam. 20th century latex mattresses promise spring without metal and resistance to some pests. Plantation rubber carried its own history of colonial land, dangerous labor, and global commodity chains. Polyurethane foam emerged from modern polymer chemistry and petrochemical industry. It can be manufactured in many densities and firmnesses, cut easily, rolled, glued, and combined in layers. Low-density foam is cheap and light, but may soften or crumble sooner. High density raises weight and cost. Viscoelastic foam, commonly called memory foam, was developed from research into cushioning under high pressure and later entered medical and consumer markets. It responds slowly to load and temperature, conforming around the body. Some sleepers value pressure distribution, others dislike heat retention or the sensation of sinking. Foam marketing often borrows space-age glamour, orthopedic authority, and laboratory imagery. A material's origin does not prove it is best for every sleeper. Comfort remains subjective, and medical benefit depends on condition and design rather than a universal hierarchy. Hybrid mattresses combine coils with foam, latex, wool, or fiber. Airbeds change pressure through a pump. Waterbeds distribute load through liquid and became a distinctive consumer fashion in the late 20th century. Each technology solves some problems while creating others: heat, motion, leakage, noise, weight, cost, or repair. The mattress interior is difficult to inspect and harder to recycle. Glued layers, mixed fibers, steel, flame barriers, and contaminated fabric require separation. Millions of discarded mattresses occupy large volume in landfills and can tangle waste machinery. Recycling programs recover steel, foam, wood, and fiber, but economics and hygiene limit reach. Beds combine fuel and vulnerability. A sleeping person detects danger slowly. Straw, cotton, foam, wood, curtains, and nightclothes can ignite from candles, hearth embers, cigarettes, heaters, or electrical faults. Fire safety therefore reshaped materials and regulation. Bed curtains near candles demanded caution long before modern codes. A warming pan filled with hot coals could scorch sheets or release fumes. Metal bed warmers and heated bricks offered comfort while carrying burn risk. Domestic servants often prepared warmth before the sleeper entered. In the 20th century, smoking in bed caused many fatal fires. Governments and manufacturers developed cigarette ignition tests and mattress flammability rules. Barrier fabrics and chemical flame retardants slowed ignition or spread. Buying escape time. Chemical solutions created new concerns. Some flame retardants persist in bodies and environments. Fiberglass and other barrier materials can irritate when a cover is removed or damaged. Standards specify test performance, not one required recipe, so manufacturers choose different constructions. Fire resistance is a trade-off, not an invitation to assume a mattress cannot burn. Bedding placed near a flame remains hazardous. The history mirrors many health reforms. A real danger produces a technical intervention. The intervention redistributes risk. Later evidence prompts revision. Labels became legal documents. They identify filling, sanitation status, manufacturing origin, and flammability compliance. The familiar warning not to remove a tag is directed primarily at sellers under law, though popular culture turned it into a joke about the consumer. During the 19th century, domestic reformers gave the bedroom intense scrutiny. They wanted air, sunlight, washable surfaces, fewer heavy draperies, and furniture that did not collect dust. Some advice improved sanitation. Some translated class taste into moral judgment. The four-germ theory gained acceptance. Miasma theories associated disease with foul air and odor. Ventilation, therefore, seemed central. Open windows, separated sleepers, and less enclosed beds promised to disperse dangerous exhalations. Later bacteriology changed the mechanism but retained interest in crowding and clean surfaces. Twin beds were promoted around the turn of the 20th century as hygienic modern furniture for married couples. Advocates argued that separate mattresses prevented exchange of breath, heat, and supposed depleted vitality. The claims mixed genuine concern about infection with mistaken physiology and anxiety about bodies. By the 1920s, twin beds could signify fashionable companionate marriage rather than cold separation. Films, advertisements, advice manuals, and showroom sets made them modern. Critics feared they weakened intimacy. The furniture became a proxy debate about sex, gender, health, and independence. Not every household had room for two beds. Working-class families often shared beds and rooms because rent and heating shaped choice. Reformers who prescribed separate rooms without addressing wages and housing mistook poverty for ignorance. Children's sleep became another field of expertise. Cribs, schedules, fresh air nurseries, solitary sleep, and self-soothing were promoted differently across decades. Advice oscillated between closeness and independence. Parents balanced expert rules with feeding, work, housing, culture, and the child before them. Hygiene changed appearance. White enamel metal frames, white sheets, and sparse rooms looked clinically clean. Smooth surfaces could indeed be washed and inspected, but a white room could still be cold, lonely, overcrowded, or poorly ventilated. Visual cleanliness became a powerful sales language because it could be photographed. The private bedroom is often treated as natural, but it requires enough rooms. In a one-room dwelling, sleep shares space with cooking, work, storage, prayer, care, and conversation. Curtains, screens, alcoves, schedules, and etiquette create privacy without a dedicated room. As some urban middle-class houses grew more specialized in the 18th and 19th centuries, bedrooms moved away from reception. Corridors allowed access without passing through another room. Servant stairs maintained service while concealing workers. Privacy for owners depended on circulation routes for labor. The marital bedroom concentrated ideals of domestic intimacy. The child's nursery and servant's attic separated ages and classes. A guest room displayed readiness to host. Real homes deviated constantly through lodgers, illness, crowding, births, and financial need. Tenement families rented beds or corners. Shift workers used the same bed at different hours, a practice sometimes called hot bedding. Sailors and migrants entered lodging houses where privacy was purchased by the night, if at all. Industrial capitalism synchronized factories while desynchronizing household sleep. Boarding and lodging blurred home and commerce. A widow might take in renters and provide a bed, gaining income while surrendering private space. Domestic respectability depended on maintaining boundaries that economic survival repeatedly crossed. Locks, diaries, reading lamps, and bedside tables supported a private self. The bed became a place to read letters, think, masturbate, pray, grieve, and escape. This inwardness was never guaranteed. Children entered, servants knocked, walls carried sound, and landlords held keys. Modern open-plan apartments and studio flats returned sleep to multifunctional space, sometimes by choice and sometimes through housing cost. Sofa beds, war beds, loft beds, and folding screens negotiate the same old question: How can one floor serve day and night? A bed draws a small orbit of objects: lamp, candle, chamber pot, water vessel, clock, book, medicine, bell, weapon, icon, telephone, and now charging cable gather within reach because the sleeper is reluctant or unable to rise. Before indoor plumbing, the chamber pot shortened a cold night journey. Servants emptied and cleaned it in wealthy households. In crowded rooms, smell and modesty required negotiation. The washstand held basin and pitcher for morning care, turning the bedroom into a partial bathroom. Candles enabled reading and work while threatening fire. Extinguishers, holders, and rules reduced risk. Gas lighting extended evening but consumed oxygen and could leak. Electric light made the bedside switch a tiny command overnight. Mechanical alarm clocks separated waking from another person's call, bell, animal, sun, or factory whistle. They disciplined workers while granting individual control. The snooze button later institutionalized negotiation with the schedule. The telephone entered the bedroom as privilege and emergency link. The smartphone now supplies clock, news, entertainment, work, social life, and light within inches of the pillow. Its design collapses boundaries the private bedroom once promised. The bed becomes an office and cinema again. Bedside tables reflect which bodies designers imagine. A high hospital table rolls over the mattress. A child needs a lower surface. Someone with limited reach needs controls placed carefully. Clutter can be nuisance or archive. Glasses, hearing aids, water, photographs, and medication map dependency and identity. Sheets look flat and quiet, but their history is global. Linen begins as flax. Cotton links fields, slavery, colonialism, mills, dyes, shipping, and retail. Silk joins insects, mulberry trees, skilled reeling, and luxury. Polyester begins in petrochemicals. Flax processing requires retting stalks, so fibers separate, then breaking, scutching, heckling, spinning, weaving. Fine linen survived repeated washing and can pass through generations. Coarse linen serves ticks and work cloth. The same plant becomes social gradation through labor. Cotton's expansion cannot be separated from enslaved labor in the Americas, colonial coercion in India and elsewhere, and mechanized mills in Britain, Europe, and the United States. Soft, affordable sheets in one bedroom were connected to brutal labor regimes far away. Spinning and weaving moved from households and workshops into factories unevenly. Mechanization increased output while imposing long hours, noise, dust, and injury. Women and children formed much of the workforce. Bedding became cheaper, partly because workers' time became cheap. Thread count later became a retail shorthand for quality. Numbers can be manipulated through multiply yarn counting and say little by themselves about fiber length, yarn quality, weave, finish, or durability. The oldest sales tactic in the bed remains: make the invisible interior sound measurable. Laundry shifted from household cauldron and washboard to commercial laundries and electric machines. Hot water, detergent, bleach, mechanical action, drying, and ironing improve hygiene while consuming energy and water. Hotel white sheets depend on industrial systems out of the guest's sight. Drying outdoors uses sun and air but depends on weather, space, and pollution. Tumble drying is fast and softens fabric while wearing fibers and consuming energy. Ironing once served hygiene and status as well as appearance. Wrinkle-resistant finishes reduce labor by adding chemistry. Quilts, blankets, and coverlets preserve techniques beyond utility. Patchwork uses new cloth or scraps, but not every quilt is made from leftovers. Patterns circulate through print, teaching, kin, trade, and migration. Makers encode skill and affection without requiring a secret symbolic language. Duvets enclose loose down or synthetic fill within a large case. Removable covers reduce the need to wash the filling. Their spread into new markets changed bed-making routines. A top sheet becomes optional, and the smooth, layered hotel bed competes with the quickly shaken duvet. Weighted blankets deliberately increase pressure and are marketed for calm. Evidence for particular clinical benefits varies, and safety depends on the user. Their popularity recalls an old truth: comfort is not only softness, but the sensed boundary around a body. Every shared bed is an agreement revised during sleep. One person warms the surface, another overheats. One snores, kicks, reads, rises early, feeds an infant, or works nights. Mattress design can reduce motion transfer, but no material resolves every social negotiation. Bed sharing has offered warmth, safety, intimacy, childcare, and efficient use of space across history. It also increases disturbance and sometimes infection risk. Research on modern couples finds both subjective comfort and measurable disruption. Feeling safe beside someone may matter differently from uninterrupted movement data. Infant sleep carries high stakes and culturally divergent practice. Some societies normalize close nighttime care. Others emphasize a separate crib and room. Modern safety guidance addresses suffocation and sudden infant death risk through evidence that cannot be replaced by historical precedent. The fact that a practice is old does not establish its safety under modern bedding and housing conditions. Siblings sharing a bed learn boundaries and exchange whispered stories. They may also lose sleep. Family memories often turn crowding into warmth after the fact, while contemporary accounts reveal conflict. Nostalgia should not erase cold rooms or lack of choice. Illness rearranges partners. One moves to a chair or spare room. Caregivers wake for medication and turning. A hospital bed enters the living room. The household becomes a ward, and sleep fragments around love and exhaustion. Separate bedrooms can signal conflict, privilege, health need, work schedule, or a practical route to better rest. Shared rooms can signal intimacy, necessity, or both. Furniture cannot diagnose a relationship. Pets enter beds for warmth, companionship, and habit. They bring movement, hair, allergens, and occasionally parasites. The debate is ancient in structure, even when the veterinary science is modern, which bodies belong inside the protected sleeping boundary. Beds are built for bodies, but inhabited by minds. Darkness magnifies small sounds. Dreams leave emotion after images vanish. Sleep paralysis can produce terrifying awareness without voluntary movement. Before physiological explanation, cultures understood such experiences through spirits, pressure, visitation, moral warning, or illness. Protective objects gather around sleeping places: amulets, written prayers, icons, herbs, weapons, charms, and blessed textiles. They offer spiritual defense and psychological reassurance according to belief. A historian need not decide whether protection was real to recognize the action it organized. Nightmares appear in ancient medical and literary texts. Sleepwalking, insomnia, excessive sleep, and strange breathing were observed long before laboratory monitoring. Witnesses described what they saw. Sleepers described what they felt. Categories changed as medicine changed. Insomnia became a more formal medical object in the late 19th century, though sleeplessness is ancient. Industrial time, artificial light, stimulants, urban noise, and new ideals of productivity altered how people interpreted a bad night. A person who once rested between tasks might now fail a clock. The sleep laboratory made the bed experimental. Electrodes record brain activity, eye movements, muscle tone, breathing, oxygen, heart rhythm, and limb movement. The subject is asked to sleep naturally while watched by instruments in an unfamiliar room. Modern sleep stages emerged from this productive contradiction. Sleep medicine identified disorders that household observation could not fully explain, especially sleep apnea and narcolepsy. Treatments such as positive airway pressure add masks, tubes, pumps, and sound to the bed. The bedroom becomes clinical while remaining intimate. Consumer sleep trackers now claim insight from wrist movement, heart signals, sound, or mattress sensors. They can reveal patterns but do not equal laboratory measurement. For some users, scores create anxiety about achieving perfect sleep, a condition sometimes called orthosomnia. The instrument meant to reassure becomes another wakeful companion. Named mattress sizes feel natural only because factories, retailers, houses, and sheets coordinate around them. Single, double, queen, king, and other labels differ by country. A traveler learns that the same name may not mean the same dimensions. Before standardization, frames were made to rooms, owners, or local convention. Textile sizes followed. Industrial production benefited from fewer options. Builders then designed bedrooms and doors around expected beds, making the standard reinforce itself. Larger beds are sold as freedom, luxury, and marital peace. They consume more floor area, timber, steel, foam, cloth, shipping volume, and heating or cooling space. The king-size bed belongs to suburban room dimensions and consumer aspiration as much as human anatomy. Body diversity tests standards. Tall sleepers need length. Heavy bodies require adequate support and durable edges. Disabled sleepers need transfer height and clearance. Couples may have different firmness needs. The supposedly average body excludes many actual bodies. Custom beds persist for boats, trucks, caravans, tiny houses, hospitals, prisons, children, and historic frames. Foam can be cut easily, while custom springs and linens cost more. Standardization lowers price by moving inconvenience to anyone outside the norm. The short historical bed myth often begins when a museum frame looks small. People in some past populations were shorter on average, but not uniformly tiny. Curved rails, missing components, pillow position, diagonal posture, and uncertain function complicate measurement. One bed cannot measure a century. Mattress sellers market a product the customer cannot easily evaluate in a few minutes. Durability takes years to reveal. The interior is hidden. Comfort changes with fatigue, room temperature, and expectation. This uncertainty invites spectacle. 19th century advertisements promised sanitary fillings and patent support. 20th century brands recruited doctors, athletes, laboratories, and national institutions. Cross-section diagrams made coils look precise. Names suggested posture, beauty, royalty, or scientific rest. The showroom introduced the awkward public trial. A clothed customer lies under bright lights, while a salesperson waits. Firmness labels offer orientation but lack universal scales. Generous return periods later moved the trial into the home, while creating streams of returned mattresses that cannot always be resold. Online mattress companies compressed foam for shipping in a box. Vacuum packing and rolling reduced warehouse and delivery costs. Unboxing became visual marketing as the mattress expanded. The model changed retail more than the fundamental foam. Sleep became a lifestyle category. Pillows, cooling covers, aromatherapy, sound machines, blackout curtains, weighted blankets, adjustable bases, and tracking subscriptions surround the mattress. Some solve real problems. Together they can imply that sleep failure is primarily a shopping failure. Warranty language distinguishes manufacturing defects from normal softening and perceived discomfort. Required foundation types, stain exclusions, and indentation thresholds limit claims. The consumer learns that a long warranty is not the same as an expected comfort life. Review culture struggles because sponsorship, individual preference, body differences, and short testing periods distort comparison. A bed that eases one person's pressure can trap another's heat. The most truthful recommendation begins with uncertainty. The mattress cannot be separated from the room's air. Fires, braziers, heated platforms, hot water bottles, fans, shutters, mosquito nets, radiators, air conditioning, humidifiers, and electric blankets all modify the microclimate around sleep. Before central heating, bed curtains and shared bodies conserved warmth within a small volume. A warming pan or hot brick heated sheets before entry, but the room itself could remain cold. Heavy caps and nightclothes protected exposed skin. Hot water bottles replaced live coals with stored heat, reducing one fire risk while creating scald and leakage risks. Rubber bottles made flexible contact possible. Electric blankets later supplied continuous heat through resistance wires and thermostats, demanding intact insulation and careful use. In heat, cross-ventilation, verandas, courtyards, roofs, fans, woven cots, and thin mats move air across skin. Ceiling fans cool people through convection and evaporation, without lowering room temperature much. Air conditioning lowers temperature and humidity at substantial energy cost. The air-conditioned bedroom helps spread thick mattresses and enclosed buildings into climates where breathable bedding once dominated. It also made sleep dependent on electrical grids and refrigerants. During outages, the material culture of the bed may prove badly matched to local heat. Noise control became another environmental technology. Thick curtains, carpets, double glazing, white noise machines, earplugs, and building codes shelter sleep from traffic and industry. Poor neighborhoods often bear greater night noise and heat, turning sleep inequality into an environmental health issue. Light follows the same pattern. Shutters and bed curtains darkened rooms before blackout shades. Urban electric glow enters windows. Shift workers sleep against daylight. Eye masks create a portable darkness, the simplest possible room within a room. Beds have never been free of work. A craft worker sewed in a chamber. An aristocrat received officials beside a state bed. A farmer rested at midday. A writer drafted under covers. The laptop did not invent working in bed, but it intensified the collapse of boundaries. Eye masks create the den bent working. One worker returned as another left. Boarding houses rented the same bed in sequence. Day sleep faced street noise, family activity, heat, and sunlight. The bed remained still while the labor clock rotated around it. Domestic workers historically slept near those they served, so a bell could summon them. Nurses dozed beside patients. New parents sleep in fragments. On-call workers place phones beside pillows. Rest becomes a form of readiness rather than release. Remote work brought paid labor into bedrooms when homes lacked offices. Video calls reveal a blurred background or conceal it digitally. The bed becomes desk, chair, and symbol of insufficient space. Employers gain access to the room without paying for it. Sex work, care work, textile work, and housekeeping make beds direct workplaces. Their histories are too often separated from furniture. History because museums preserve frames rather than transactions. The same surface can be home, clinic, livelihood, and site of coercion. Ergonomic advice often assumes a worker can choose another room. For someone confined by illness, disability, housing, or danger, the bed may be the safest available work surface. Design responds with overbed tables, reading wedges, lap desks, and powered positioning. Getting into bed is a movement sequence. Approach, turn, sit, lift legs, lower torso, reposition. Arthritis, paralysis, pain, weakness, dizziness, pregnancy, or fatigue can make any step difficult. Bed height is therefore not cosmetic. A surface too low demands strength to rise. One too high leaves feet unsupported. Soft edges collapse during transfer. Rugs and clutter obstruct mobility aids. Handles and rails can help when correctly selected and can trap when poorly designed. Home hospital beds bring powered height and articulation into domestic rooms. They improve care access but alter the visual meaning of home. Families decorate rails, use familiar quilts, and reposition furniture to soften the institution's arrival. Pressure care reveals the importance of motion. Most sleepers shift position without waking fully. A person unable to move needs assistance or a surface that changes load. Caregivers turn bodies through the night, sacrificing their own sleep to protect another's skin. Adjustable bases entered consumer markets with promises of reading comfort, reduced snoring, and luxury. Their lineage overlaps with clinical articulation, but consumer claims exceed evidence at times. Motors add weight and points of failure while granting independence to some users. Bed exit alarms and sensors can support dementia care but may increase surveillance. Lower beds and floor mats reduce injury from falls while potentially making caregiver work harder. There is no neutral design. Every safety choice redistributes risk and autonomy. The accessible bed is made with the sleeper, not merely prescribed to them. Side of transfer, caregiver reach, preferred posture, cultural bedding, partner presence, and room size all matter. A technically advanced bed that prevents intimacy or cannot fit through the door has failed part of its task. Beds begin in landscapes and end in waste streams. Timber comes from forests. Cotton and flax use land and water. Wool comes from animals and pasture. Steel begins in mines. Foam begins in oil and gas. Latex comes from plantations. Every layer has a geography. Durability can reduce replacement, but a durable, uncomfortable mattress may be discarded early. Fashion accelerates turnover through new firmness claims and bedroom styles. Hygiene rules appropriately restrict resale in some contexts while making reuse difficult. Mattress recycling is laborious. Workers strip fabric, cut foam, pull felt, separate wood, and compress steel. Contamination and bedbugs require precautions. Recovered foam may become carpet underlay. Fibers become insulation. Steel returns to metal markets. Prices determine whether recovery pays. Natural materials are not automatically low impact. Cotton may require irrigation and pesticides. Wool carries methane and land use. Latex plantations can replace diverse forest. Synthetic foam uses fossil feedstock but may provide long service with less mass. Life cycle comparison depends on source, longevity, transport, and disposal. Dispose on disposal. Repairable joinery, replaceable slats, and standard fasteners extend life. Flat-pack furniture reduces shipping volume, but can weaken through repeated disassembly. A massive heirloom bed stores craft and carbon while resisting small apartments. Second-hand beds raise a conflict between waste reduction and pest or sanitation risk. Frames that can be inspected and cleaned differ from sealed upholstered mattresses. Policy must balance affordable furniture, landfill reduction, and health rather than treating all used objects alike. The circular bed of the future may be designed for disassembly. Covers zip away, layers separate without glue, springs return to steel, and worn components are replaced alone. Such design revives an old principle of the straw tick and rope bed. Keep the case and frame. Renew what is worn inside. Comfort is not an objective ladder from grass to foam. It is a relationship between body, expectation, climate, surface, and safety. A sleeper accustomed to a firm mat may ache on deep foam. Someone raised on a plush mattress may struggle on tatami. Adaptation does not make every surface equally supportive, but it complicates easy ranking. Softness can relieve pressure and also make movement difficult. Firmness can support and also concentrate load. Warmth comforts in winter and prevents sleep in summer. Enclosure grants privacy and traps stale air. Height eases standing and increases the consequence of falling. Advertising treats comfort as a feature installed in a product. Households know it is made nightly. Opening a window, shaking a quilt, tightening rope, turning a mattress, dimming light, calming a child, moving away from a snoring partner, or welcoming someone close. Class changes, which discomforts are optional. The wealthy can adjust temperature, replace a sagging mattress, choose a quiet neighborhood, and reserve a room. The poor are more likely to face crowding, shift noise, infestation, heat, unsafe housing, and eviction. Sleep inequality cannot be solved by pillow selection. Culture gives discomfort meaning. A hard initiation bed, monastic pallet, military cot, luxurious feather bed, and shared family mat produce different expectations. Voluntary may match while power differs. The best historical question is therefore not, was this bed comfortable? It is, comfortable for whom, in what weather, for how long, compared with what, and maintained by whose work. Across the vast societies historians call the Islamic world, sleeping arrangements differed by century, climate, city, class, and local building tradition. A house in Cairo, a tent in Central Asia, a courtyard dwelling in Damascus, and a palace in Mughal India did not contain one standard Muslim bed. What often linked them was the importance of textiles and the ability to transform rooms through furnishing. Rugs, mats, quilts, cushions, bolsters, and mattresses could be spread for rest and gathered or stacked when the room returned to daytime use. This flexibility was not an absence of furniture. It was a different investment, portable, washable, rearrangeable surfaces rather than a large permanent frame. The Arabic word that eventually gave European languages, mattress, referred to something thrown down, or a place where something is laid. Words travel because objects and practices travel. Yet borrowing does not mean Europeans had never padded a bed. The linguistic trail points to Mediterranean exchange and to admiration for forms of cushioned furnishing. Textiles organized warmth and rank. Fine cotton, silk, wool, embroidery, and pattern covers could make a sleeping place lavish without raising it high. A poorer household used reed mats, coarse cloth, wool, felt, or shared quilts. A nomadic tent and an urban room both relied on portable bedding for different reasons. Privacy was produced by household planning, curtains, screens, gendered access, and time. Courtyard houses turned many rooms inward. Roofs could become sleeping places in hot weather. A family moved bedding toward airflow as evening cooled the masonry. The bed followed climate within the house. Travel accounts often exoticized floor sleeping because European visitors compared it to their own bedsteads. They noticed posture and missed labor. Mats had to be swept. Quilts were aired. Cotton was carded. Covers were washed. Storage chests protected textiles by day. Flexible rooms demanded daily transformation. Bathing traditions and sleep intersected through bodily preparation. Washing before prayer, visiting a bathhouse, changing garments, combing hair, burning fragrance, or drinking a calming infusion could shape the transition to night. Practices varied and should not be assembled into one imaginary routine. Hospitals founded in medieval Islamic societies included spaces for patients and attendants, but surviving descriptions emphasize institutions more than individual bed construction. Physicians wrote about sleep, wakefulness, temperament, and environment within inherited and revised Greek medical frameworks. They observed insomnia, nightmares, and excessive sleep without modern neurological measurement. At courts, beds and resting couches became political objects much as they did elsewhere. Audiences could occur in chambers rich with carpets and cushions. Gifts of textiles moved between rulers. The portable surface could carry as much ceremonial value as a carved state bed. Ottoman households used low divans around rooms for sitting and sometimes sleeping, alongside mattresses and quilts stored in cupboards. European travelers turned the divan into a symbol of indolence, overlooking that the same platform served conversation, work, hospitality, and rest. The moral judgment came from the observer, not the cushion. In Central Asian pastoral worlds, felt insulated tent interiors and bedding, making felt required cleaning and arranging wool, wetting it, rolling, pressing, and repeated labor until fibers locked together. The result served floors, walls, covers, storage, and transport. Sleep was enclosed by animal fiber at several scales. Across North Africa, woven wool blankets, palm mats, leather cushions, wood, and later metal frames met desert nights and Mediterranean trade. Colonial rule altered industries and domestic ideals, but local users selected among objects. A brass bed could join a room of rugs without erasing either tradition. The lesson is architectural flexibility. A room emptied of bedding is not a bedroom that has failed to exist. It is space released for the day. A permanent frame saves nightly setup, while a stored mattress saves daily floor. Each system asks labor at a different hour. Southeast Asia's climates make airflow and moisture central to sleep. Houses raised on posts protect against floods, allow air below, and create shaded workspace. Inside, woven mats, bamboo floors, low platforms, pillows, and mosquito nets form beds that breathe. Bamboo is light, strong along its fibers, fast-growing, and hollow. Split into strips, it can be woven into mats or sleeping platforms. Whole columns become frame members. The surface flexes and allows air between elements. Untreated bamboo can split, mold, or attract insects, so selection, drying, smoke, and replacement matter. Rattan and cane supply lacing and woven furniture. Pandanus, sedges, palms, and other plants become mats through locally specific preparation. Leaves may be boiled, dried, dyed, split, and plated. A sleeping mat, therefore, records botanical knowledge and hours of handwork. In stilt houses, the floor itself can be a ventilated platform. Bedding remains thin because a thick insulating mattress would work against the climate. At night, nets hang from rafters or frames. During the day, they are tied up, and mats may be rolled away. Mosquito nets became entangled with colonial tropical medicine. Europeans enclosed their beds against insects while often living in segregated compounds with better drainage and screens than colonized workers received. Later malaria programs promoted treated nets at population scale. The net is both an old physical barrier and, in treated form, a modern chemical intervention. Sleeping on verandas or raised pavilions use night air, but expose sleepers to sound, smoke, insects, and monsoon rain. Shutters and DBs controlled sudden weather. The best place in one month might be unusable in another. In many households, babies sleep near caregivers, and older children share mats. Kinship determines placement. A guest may receive the freshest mat, an extra pillow, or the location with best airflow. Hospitality is expressed through arrangement rather than a separate room. Court and elite beds complicate any image of universal simplicity. Carved, gilded, lacquered, or canopy beds appeared in palaces and wealthy homes. Colonial trade brought European frames and spring mattresses. Hotel and urban consumer markets later promoted air-conditioned, thick mattress sleep as modern. Foam spread widely because it is light and requires no complex spring factory nearby. In humid conditions, however, foam placed directly on a poorly ventilated floor can trap moisture and mold. Users raise, turn, sun, or air mattresses when space and weather permit. Material success still depends on routine. The colonial plantation changed sleep through wage discipline. Rubber, sugar, tea, tobacco, and tin workers lived in barracks or crowded quarters. Estate managers treated bunks as labor infrastructure. Indigenous and migrant sleeping customs met imposed schedules, mosquitoes, noise and surveillance. War displaced millions through camps where mats, hammocks, tarpaulins and military cots became temporary homes. A rolled mat allowed movement under terrible conditions. Its portability was resilience born inside upheaval, not proof that little comfort was needed. Contemporary Southeast Asian cities contain air-conditioned towers, factory dormitories, rural stilt houses, informal settlements, capsule hostels, and luxury hotels. No single bed represents modernity. The relevant divide is often between those who can control heat, noise, pests, and tenure, and those who cannot. Across Oceania, bedding reflects islands and continental environments separated by enormous distances. Mats, bark cloth, woven sleeping platforms, wooden headrests, leaves, skins, and later blankets and mattresses appear in different combinations. European records are abundant, but filtered through missionaries, traders, and colonizers. Bark cloth is made by stripping inner bark, soaking or preparing it, and beating fibers into broad sheets. Pieces can be joined, decorated, and layered. It serves clothing, wrapping, ceremony, exchange, and bedding. Its softness is made by repeated blows and skilled handling, rather than by spinning thread. Finely woven mats can be valuable heirlooms and ceremonial gifts, not disposable floor covering. Their edges, dyes, motifs, and condition carry family history. Sleeping upon a mat may place the body on wealth that is social rather than upholstered. Raised platforms and houses improve airflow in tropical islands. Coconut fiber and pandanus leaves supply cordage and weaving. Wooden headrests protect hair and keep the face above a warm surface. Nets may address mosquitoes where disease vectors are present. In Maori communities, sleeping houses were shaped by communal life, weather, and tapu. Woven mats and cloaks offered insulation. European introduced blankets became trade goods and necessities as colonial land loss and new housing disrupted older material systems. Introduced diseases made crowding newly dangerous. In Aboriginal Australian societies, sleeping arrangements varied across deserts, tropical north, coasts, and cooler south. Windbreaks, fires, plant bedding, skins, and chosen orientation managed night. A small fire beside each person can create a local thermal zone. Colonial observers who saw only a person on ground missed the engineered relation among fire, windbreak, body, and season. Mission stations and government settlements imposed dormitories, blankets, and iron beds while separating families. Children removed to institutions encountered the bed as a tool of discipline. The demand to sleep in rows carried an entire policy of assimilation. European wool blankets were not neutral gifts. They entered exchange, aid, coercion, and markets. If wet, dirty, or inadequate, they could worsen conditions. Stories of contaminated blankets were universally and deliberately distributed to spread disease collapse distinct events into a single claim. Specific cases require specific evidence. Pacific navigation demanded rest in canoes and later ships. Space was scarce, motion constant, and salt spray damaging. Sailors wedged bodies, used mats, or slept in shifts. A voyager's sleeping arrangement was part of navigation because fatigue could be fatal. Today, climate change threatens rest through heat, cyclones, saltwater intrusion, relocation, and crowded emergency housing. Air conditioning may be costly or unavailable. Traditional ventilation knowledge remains valuable, but changed settlement density and building materials alter its effect. Colonial Latin American beds emerge from violent encounter among Indigenous American, Iberian, African, and later Asian peoples. Hammocks, tats or woven mats, hides, wooden frames, cotton textiles, wool blankets, straw ticks, and carved elite beds occupied the same cities and regions under unequal conditions. The petate, a mat woven from palm or reed, served sleep, work, wrapping, and ritual in parts of Mexico and Central America. Rolled by day, it made a portable personal surface. Spanish colonial language sometimes used sleeping on a mat as a marker of poverty, yet the mat was a skilled and climate-suited object. Hammocks remained central in tropical lowlands and spread through ships, military camps, and households. Europeans adopted them while racializing the people from whom they learned. In some colonial paintings, bed form helps signal caste and status, but artistic convention is not a census. Elite urban homes imported or commissioned carved bedsteads, damask hangings, lace, linen, and silver warming objects. Domestic servants and enslaved people maintained these chambers. The bed displayed connections to transatlantic trade while relying on local workshops. Mining towns and plantations produced crowded worker housing. Enslaved Africans and indigenous coerced laborers slept in barracks, huts, or improvised quarters. High-altitude cold, tropical humidity, and disease required different bedding, but owners often supplied according to cost rather than need. Wool industries in the Andes and Mexico linked sheep introduced by Europeans to indigenous spinning and weaving skills. Blankets became household essentials and commercial goods. Colonial workshops could impose coercive labor. A warm textile carried both adaptation and exploitation. In Andean highlands, raised platforms, mats, wool covers, sheepskins, and shared body warmth addressed cold nights in buildings with limited heating. Heavy woven blankets stored warmth but were difficult to wash and dry. Sun and dry air helped airing when weather allowed. Urban modernization brought iron beds, hygiene campaigns, hospitals, boarding schools, and department store bedrooms. Reformers condemned floor sleeping in shared rooms while failing to provide affordable housing. The same pattern appeared across continents. Furniture stood in for social reform. 20th century foam and steel industries created regional brands. Telenovelas and advertising displayed the bedroom as romance and aspiration. Rural households combined new mattresses with old mats, hammocks, and quilts. Material change was additive rather than total replacement. Migration carried bedding practices north and south. A hammock appears in an apartment balcony. A woven blanket covers a factory mattress. A family sleeps together in a crowded room because rent, not tradition alone, determines arrangement. Culture and economy meet in the square meters around the bed. The bed is made twice, once by craft and again each morning. Before factories, specialized trades overlapped. Carpenters and joiners built frames, turners shaped posts, carvers added ornament. Rope makers supplied support, weavers made ticking, upholsterers filled and covered mattresses, seamstresses created curtains and cases. In early modern London, upholders sold and repaired upholstered goods, including beds. The company regulated materials and practice, at least in principle. Rules against dirty flock or forbidden fillings revealed both health concern and competition. A regulation exists because someone has reason to evade it. Second-hand bedding was economically important and medically feared. Textiles held value too great to discard casually. Dealers cleaned, remade, or resold them. After epidemic illness, authorities sometimes ordered burning or purification. Such responses mixed practical contagion control with older fear about matter-carrying corruption. Mattress making began with the tick. Strong cloth was measured and sewn, leaving an opening. Filling was teased apart and distributed to avoid hard lumps. The maker closed the case and tufted through its depth, using buttons or stitched rosettes to keep layers from shifting. Tufting is both structural and visual. Long needles pass through thick material. Cord compresses the filling at intervals, creating cells. The even surface admired by the buyer depends on hand strength and judgment hidden inside fabric. Rope beds need repeated tension. A frame under load pulls at joints, rope stretches with humidity and use. Tightening patterns distribute force. The familiar phrase, sleep tight, is often confidently derived from tightening bed ropes, but direct etymological proof is weak. A pleasing story is not evidence. Feather bed renovation became a service. Feathers were removed, cleaned with steam or specialized equipment, sorted and returned to new ticking. The process addressed odor, dust, broken quills and soiling while preserving expensive filling. Modern hygiene campaigns advertise machinery as reassurance. Furniture repairers learn to identify wood movement, failed glue, loose tenons, cracked castings, and sagging supports. A bed receives repeated dynamic load, unlike a display cabinet. Its quiet stability is an engineering achievement renewed through small repairs. Domestic sewing kept commercial beds in service. A sheet worn at the center could be split, outer edges joined into a new center, and hems resewn. This sides to middle repair extended linen life. When too worn for bed, cloth became children's items. Bandages, cleaning rags, or paper feedstock. Industrial production divided these skills. One worker operated a wire former, another sewed tape edges, another glued foam, another inspected packaging. Division increased speed while making the whole bed unknowable to any one maker. Contemporary custom makers revive hand-tied springs, natural fillings, and traditional joinery for wealthy clients. Their word preserves skill but can romanticize a past in which such labor was hard and elite comfort unequal. Craft value and social critique can coexist. Informal repair remains vital around the world. A roadside welder fixes a steel frame. A weaver renews charpoy webbing. A family airs cotton and restitches a cover. These practices keep bulky objects out of waste streams and preserve local independence from proprietary parts. The history of beds includes what people wore in them. Many sleepers kept on versions of the day's underclothing or slept unclothed according to climate and custom. Dedicated nightshirts, nightgowns, pajamas, caps, socks, robes, and slippers spread unevenly with textile abundance and ideas of modesty. Nightcaps reduced heat loss from the head in cold rooms and protected hair or bedding. Their comic appearance to modern eyes comes from centrally heated expectations. A sleeper under blankets with face and head exposed experiences the room differently. The word pajamas comes through South Asian clothing traditions into English. Loose trousers and tops adapted as sleepwear are another case in which empire appropriated a practical garment, changed its use, and sold it as novelty. By the 20th century, pajamas signaled modern leisure for multiple genders and ages. Nightwear mediated emergency. A house fire, intruder. Childbirth call, or chamber pot journey might expose the sleeper to others. Robes and slippers waited nearby. Modesty was designed around the possibility of interruption. Fabric affected safety. Loose sleeves and flammable brushed cloth caught flame. Children's sleepwear later became subject to flammability standards. prompting chemical treatments or close-fitting designs. Comfort, mobility, and fire resistance were negotiated in seams. Laundry again determined access. A wealthy person owned changes of linen. A poor sleeper wore the same garment longer. Sweat, skin oils, lice, and fleas moved among body, nightwear, and bed. Changing one layer without cleaning others offered incomplete relief. Fashion brought the bed into public fantasy. Hollywood pajamas, peignoirs, smoking jackets, and breakfast coats staged a luxurious interval between private and dressed. The garment proved one could afford time at home. In hospitals, the open-backed gown prioritized examination and access, often at the cost of dignity and warmth. Patients supplemented with robes, socks, or personal clothes when permitted. The institutional sleeping body is made available to care. Modern athletic fabrics promise moisture management and temperature control in sleepwear. Their performance depends on fiber, knit, fit, washing, and room climate. Marketing once again offers a garment as the missing technology for a biological process. A history of beds can easily become a history of objects without time. Yet a bed used for 8 continuous night hours differs from one entered in shifts, left for prayer, revisited after watching animals, or used for an afternoon rest. Historical European sources sometimes describe a first sleep and second sleep, separated by a wakeful interval. This evidence is substantial in certain places and periods, but the claim that all pre-industrial humans naturally slept in 2 segments is too broad. Season, light, labor, age, and culture produce varied patterns. During a midnight waking, people prayed, talked, tended fire, had sex, checked animals, performed household work, or lay quietly. The interval was not necessarily insomnia, because expectation shapes distress. A person who anticipates waking interprets it differently from someone who believes healthy sleep must be unbroken. In warm climates, an afternoon rest can move activity away from peak heat. The siesta is neither universal in Spanish-speaking worlds nor mere laziness. Work hours, meal timing, urban commute, air conditioning, and school schedules determine whether it remains possible. Pastoralists wait for animals. Pastoralists wait for animals. Fashion crews sleep around tides and catches. Farmers work intensely during harvest and differently in winter. Monastic hours interrupt night for prayer. Sailors divide watches. Mothers feed infants. The clock of sleep has always been occupational. Industrial factories imposed bells and shifts with unprecedented regularity. Workers had to arrive at a synchronized hour regardless of seasonal light. Artificial illumination extended work and leisure. Public transport and commuting claimed additional morning and evening time. 8 hours became a labor demand as much as health advice. 8 hours for work, 8 for rest, 8 for what we will. The slogan challenged workdays that consumed nearly all waking life. The bed entered politics as the place workers were entitled to occupy. Night shifts make society's hidden maintenance possible. Nurses, cleaners, drivers, guards, bakers, factory workers, and data center staff sleep while neighbors are awake. Their bedrooms must resist daylight and noise, and their circadian systems face strain. A premium mattress cannot reschedule the sun. Electric entertainment moved bedtime later. Radio, television, and the internet each attracted warnings that the new medium invaded sleep. The warnings were sometimes moral panic and sometimes accurate observation of displaced time. Modern sleep advice emphasizes regular schedules, but many people cannot choose them. Multiple jobs, caregiving, housing noise, and unpredictable shifts create irregularity. The social history of the bed insists that sleep behavior is never only individual discipline. Beds enter ritual because they hold transitions. Marriage joins households and often brings bedding as dowry, gift, or public display. Birth begins on or near a prepared surface. Illness suspends ordinary roles. Death leaves an empty place saturated with memory. Wedding beds were blessed, decorated, witnessed, joked about, or inspected in different societies. Sheets could become supposed evidence of virginity, a practice grounded in control and false assumptions about bodies. The bed made sexuality subject to family and community authority. Dowries frequently included sheets, quilts, blankets, curtains, mattresses, or a bedstead because a new household needed material capital. Girls and women spun, embroidered, or quilted items over years. The chest of bedding represented skill and future security, while dowry demands could also become coercive and dangerous. Birth chambers were warmed, darkened, opened to female attendants, or regulated by physicians according to period. Ropes, stools, bolsters, floor mats, and beds supported different positions. The later dominance of the hospital bed reflects professional authority and equipment placement, as well as medical safety. Postpartum confinement traditions create protected periods of rest and care in many cultures. Special bedding, warmth, foods, and female assistance shelter parent and infant. They can provide essential recovery or become restrictive depending on consent and practice. The sick bed gathers gifts, medicine, visitors, and news. It can grant temporary release from duties, but chronic illness may isolate. Literature uses the bed to reveal character because social masks weaken when the body cannot rise. Deathbeds once drew family, clergy, neighbors, and legal witnesses into the chamber. Final words carried narrative power. Wills were confirmed. The dying person's posture and composure became moral evidence. Sudden death was feared partly because it denied this managed ending. After death, bedding could be burned, cleaned, inherited, sold, or given away. Fear of contagion competed with material value and attachment. A surviving depression in a pillow could be unbearable or cherished. Mourning changes the shared bed. A widow or widower encounters absence each night. Some keep the other side untouched. Others remove the bed entirely. Museums catalog dimensions and materials, but not this weight. Beds also hold religious discipline. Monastic rules may prescribe simple bedding to limit luxury. Pilgrims accept rough lodging. Ascetics sleep on hard surfaces by choice. Voluntary hardness draws meaning from the availability of softness. Imposed hardness is merely deprivation. The most fundamental bed technology is secure tenure over a few horizontal feet. Without it, even excellent bedding cannot guarantee sleep. People experiencing homelessness sleep in shelters, vehicles, tents, stations, doorways, camps, borrowed rooms, and places kept deliberately hidden. Public benches designed with dividers, spikes, slopes, or narrow dimensions prevent lying down. This hostile architecture treats the visible sleeper as the problem rather than the lack of housing. The design succeeds by moving exhaustion elsewhere. Shelters provide vital protection, but may impose entry times, separation from partners or pets, sobriety rules, searches, bright dormitories, noise, and morning exit. A person may judge a hidden outdoor place safer than a crowded bunk. That decision cannot be understood from mattress quality alone. Possessions must remain near the body. Shoes become pillows, bags become barriers, and sleep stays light against theft or assault. Weather dictates layers. Wet bedding is difficult to dry when one lacks a private line or heated room. Criminalization compounds fatigue. Police or security wake people and order them to move. Each interruption fragments sleep. Exhaustion then makes appointments, work, emotional regulation, and healthcare harder, reinforcing instability. Families in insecure housing move between motels, relatives, cars, and shelters. Children attend school after nights without quiet. A nominal bed may change every week. The harm lies in uncertainty as much as surface. Housing first approaches recognize that treatment and stability are easier after a person has a secure home. The bed in that home is not a reward for solving every other problem. It is infrastructure for recovery. Donation drives often collect bedding, but organizations need washable, appropriate items and storage. A beautiful used mattress may carry pests or be impossible to transport. Listening to service providers and recipients matters more than assuming what comfort looks like. The history of royal state beds and street deterrence belongs in one account, because both reveal power. One structure raises a body for public honor. Another prevents a body from becoming horizontal at all. Epidemics make beds appear quickly in unexpected spaces. Schools, armories, convention halls, tents, ships, and stadiums become wards. Cots arrive in rows with measured gaps. Screens, oxygen lines, hand-washing stations, and routes for clean and contaminated traffic remake the building. During influenza pandemics, families cared for sick relatives at home while hospitals overflowed. Bedding required washing, but caregivers lacked modern understanding or equipment in many periods. Shared rooms accelerated respiratory transmission. Exhausted nurses moved from bed to bed. Tuberculosis treatment shaped sanatoria with beds rolled onto balconies or terraces for fresh air regimens. Before effective antibiotics, rest, nutrition, sunlight, and air formed the therapeutic environment. The architecture made the bed mobile toward the outdoors. The COVID-19 pandemic renewed emergency bed imagery. Intensive care capacity was counted in beds, but a bed without trained staff, oxygen, medicines, protective equipment, and space was not capacity in the meaningful sense. The object became shorthand for an entire care system. Isolation moved infected people into bedrooms and separated partners. Work, school, sickness, and recovery occurred on one mattress. Those in crowded homes could not isolate effectively. Housing once again determined exposure. Field hospitals use standardized frames because logistics demand predictable dimensions. Mattresses arrive sealed and washable. Assembly teams map electrical loads and gas supply. The historical row of beds gains monitors and tubing while retaining its basic spatial logic. After crisis, temporary beds must be cleaned, stored, reused, recycled, or discarded. Emergency procurement can create waste. Equipment designed for rapid deployment may lack repair pathways once warranties and contracts end. An epidemic also changes the meaning of an empty bed. It can signify readiness, lost revenue, discharged recovery, or death. Statistics count occupancy, while families remember the individual who lay there. The pillow deserves its own history because it sits between face, breath, hair, and bed. Ancient headrests support the neck with little soft material. Later cushions use wool, feathers, cotton, kapok, hair, down, latex, foam, air, water, buckwheat hulls, or shaped fiber. A pillow's ideal height depends on posture, shoulder width, mattress sink, and habit. Side sleeping generally creates a larger gap between head and surface than back sleeping. Stomach sleeping changes the relation again. Universal pillow claims ignore geometry. Bolsters span much of a bed and support head, back, knees, or multiple sleepers. In Southeast and South Asia, long body pillows and cylindrical bolsters occupy distinct roles. In early modern Europe, large bolsters helped create the layered slope visible in portraits. Pillowcases protect difficult filling from oils and saliva. They are changed and washed more readily than the pillow. Tightly woven ticking prevents quills from escaping. Buttons, zippers, envelope folds, and ties solve closure differently. Hair practices shape pillow design. Headrests protect elaborate arrangements. Silk or satin covers reduce friction for some hair types. Bonnets and scarves shift protection from pillow to head. Beauty routines and sleep technology overlap. Medical pillows promise cervical alignment, reduced reflux, support during pregnancy, recovery after surgery, or prevention of pressure. Some designs are useful for defined needs, but the word orthopedic is often marketing rather than regulated proof. The pillow also carries emotion. Children embrace it. Travelers bring one from home. A scent reassures or disturbs. Tears enter it unseen. In stories, pillows smother, conceal letters, hold dreams, and receive last breaths. Pillow fights turn an object of stillness into play, while the burst feather pillow becomes comic chaos. The joke works because the well-made pillow normally contains its interior so completely. Hotels offer pillow menus to turn minor difference into luxury. Hospitals encase pillows in fluid-resistant covers for cleaning. Airlines shrink them to fit economy. Each institution reveals what it thinks a sleeper deserves. Children outgrow beds, making their furniture unusually temporary. A cradle rocks. A crib confines. A toddler bed lowers. A bunk stacks siblings. Each form embodies assumptions about supervision and independence. Cradles use motion that echoes carrying. They can be woven baskets, wooden boxes on rockers, suspended cloth, or portable boards according to culture. Safe modern sleep guidance limits soft items and unstable designs, reminding us again that historical beauty is not a safety certification. Cribs raise barriers around an infant. Slat spacing, mattress fit, hardware, corner posts, paint, and drop-side mechanisms became matters of regulation after injuries and deaths. Standards change because surveillance reveals hazards not obvious in a showroom. A cradleboard in indigenous North American traditions carries and protects an infant while allowing caregivers to work and travel. Colonial authorities often stigmatize the practice without understanding its skilled construction and social use. Bunk beds economize on floor. Ladders, guardrails, ceiling clearance, and age determine risk. The upper bunk grants status to one child and inconvenience to the person changing sheets. In ships, dormitories, and crowded homes, vertical stacking turns air into real estate. The racecar bed, princess canopy, and branded duvet make childhood a consumer theme. Furniture promises imaginative independence, while parents bear cost and disposal when taste changes. A plain bed with stories told beside it may carry more fantasy than printed plastic. Bedtime routines, washing, changing, story, song, prayer, drink, light, farewell help children cross from social day into solitary or shared sleep. Their repetition provides predictability. The bed is the stage, but relationship is the mechanism. Night fears make space beneath the bed meaningful. The gap stores monsters, dust, boxes, and lost toys. A frame raised for cleaning creates an imaginative darkness. Platform beds remove the void and create different stories. Adolescence turns the bedroom into territory. Posters, locked doors. Music, mess, and device use claim identity. The bed becomes seating for friends and retreat from family. Privacy expands before housing independence is economically possible. For children in foster care, institutions, displacement, or domestic violence, a stable bed may carry unfamiliar safety. Rules about belongings and nighttime can either restore control or repeat powerlessness. Trauma-informed care asks before touching the sleeping space. Artists return to beds because they hold unguarded bodies. Paintings show birth, illness, lovers, dreams, murder, laziness, devotion, and death. An empty, rumpled bed suggests a person more strongly than a neatly made one. Portraits of rulers in state beds make fabric political. Genre scenes of poor interiors turn straw and crowding into pity, judgment, or social critique. Modern photography enters bedrooms to document housing, intimacy, or war. The camera itself changes the privacy it records. Literature uses beds as thresholds. A character overhears behind curtains, hides an object under a mattress, wakes transformed, refuses for ruse. The bed concentrates plot because vulnerability narrows escape. Language preserves old material. We make a bed, though we rarely manufacture it each morning. We turn in, pull up covers, put a problem to bed, lie in the bed we made, and get out on the wrong side. Metaphor treats the bed as consequence, closure, and temperament. Bed and board join sleep with food as the minimum offered by a household. Bedroom community links residence to commuting. Hospital bed stands for staffed capacity. Riverbed extends the word to a surface on which water lies. The basic images support beneath something at rest. Museum beds are difficult to display honestly. Bare frames look austere because original textiles are too fragile or lost. Reproductions risk appearing authentic. Curators use inventories, textile fragments, paintings, and conservation limits to suggest the dressed object. Visitors often ask whether a famous person truly slept there. Provenance rarely supports every legend. A bed associated with a house may be correct in period, but acquired later. The desire for bodily contact with history encourages certainty beyond evidence. Family beds gather quieter provenance. A grandparent's frame moves between houses. A quilt carries names. A child's height is marked on a post. A sag recalls two bodies. These traces lack museum labels but organize personal history. Discarding a bed can feel more intimate than discarding a table. It has absorbed illness, sex, dreams, arguments, and years of unconscious weight. Even when hygiene demands disposal, the object can feel like a witness. Beds cannot be understood at the moment of purchase. Their history is maintenance. Airing releases moisture. Sun adds heat and ultraviolet exposure, though it does not reliably sterilize every layer. Beating removes dust while sending it into the air. Washing works only on components that can dry fully. The morning practice of opening a bed before making it allows sweat to evaporate. Immediately sealing warm, damp bedding beneath covers may retain moisture. Yet open windows admit rain, pollution, insects, or cold according to place. Advice must meet environment. Mattresses too large to wash were brushed, beaten, turned, restuffed, exposed outdoors, or professionally renovated. Handles on mattress sides were often intended to help positioning, not to bear the full suspended weight. Regular turning distributed wear in designs with usable surfaces on both sides. The vacuum cleaner brought mechanical suction to mattress seams, carpets, and upholstered frames. Early machines were bulky services operated from outside houses. Domestic electric models later became ordinary. Vacuuming removes debris and some pests, but does not alone solve the bedbug infestation. Sun bleaching gave linen brightness. Boiling laundry reduced many organisms and loosened soil, but consumed fuel and damaged fabric. Lye and strong soap injured skin. Bluing countered yellow tones optically. The clean bed was an achievement in chemistry and perception. Mattress protectors separate body fluids, allergens, and pests from the difficult interior. Impermeable covers simplify cleaning but can trap heat and make noise. Breathable barriers balance vapor movement with liquid resistance. Zippered encasements used in pest management must remain intact and correctly fitted. Dust mites feed largely on shed skin and thrive in suitable warmth and humidity. They are not bedbugs and do not bite, but their waste can trigger allergy. Humidity control, Washing, barriers, and cleaning address exposure. The invisible mite became a major late 20th century marketing figure, sometimes with claims beyond evidence. Making a bed tightly produces order and hotel aesthetics. Leaving it open aids airing. Military corners demonstrate discipline. A loosely spread quilt suggests ease. The same action sits at the intersection of hygiene, taste, authority, and time. Paid cleaners often encounter the greatest exposure to dust, chemicals, bodily fluids, and infestation. Protective equipment, training, reasonable workloads, and respect are part of bed hygiene. Cleanliness is not a property of sheets, it is a labor relation. The future bed is being sold as intelligent. Sensors beneath a mattress estimate movement, breathing, heart rate, temperature, and presence. Climate systems warm one side and cool another. Adjustable bases respond to snoring. Apps turn the night into graphs. Useful monitoring can identify patterns or warn caregivers, but bedroom data is intimate. It can reveal presence, absence, illness, sex, and routine. Who owns it? A manufacturer, insurer, employer, care facility, or sleeper. The private bed may become one of the most surveilled objects in the house. Connected components create cybersecurity and obsolescence problems. A motorized bed should continue to support a person when servers close or software updates stop. Manual release matters during power failure. Repairable mechanics may be more humane than a sealed intelligent system. Robotic hospital beds can reposition patients, assist transfers, or move through facilities. Care robots may reduce lifting injury. They cannot interpret every expression of fear or dignity. Automation is best used to return time to human care, not justify fewer caregivers. Personal climate beds aim to condition the small space around a body rather than an entire room. This could reduce energy if designed well. Heated platforms, bed curtains, hot water bottles, and fans show that microclimate control is an ancient idea wearing electronics. New foams and textiles pursue lower carbon. Recyclability, phase change temperature control, and antimicrobial surfaces. Claims require life cycle and safety evidence. A bio-based ingredient may still use toxic processing or resist recycling. The green label can hide the same opaque interior as the orthopedic label. Spaceflight poses a bed without weight. Astronauts secure sleeping bags to a surface so they do not drift, use ventilation to prevent exhaled carbon dioxide from pooling, and manage light on an orbital schedule. Support against gravity becomes unnecessary while enclosure and orientation remain psychologically useful. Long-duration missions will make privacy, circadian lighting, noise, and washable bedding critical. The most advanced sleeping compartment may resemble the oldest prepared niche in one respect. A small chosen boundary inside a dangerous environment, climate migration will shape beds more profoundly than novelty gadgets. Heat, flood, fire, conflict, and housing cost will move people into temporary shelters and smaller homes. Portable, ventilated, repairable bedding may matter more than connected luxury. The future can learn from the charpoy's replaceable webbing, the futon's spatial flexibility, the hammock's airflow, the kang's shared heat, the straw tick's renewable interior, and the hospital bed's adjustability without pretending old forms were perfect. Return to the first prepared patch of grass. It was not crude. It addressed pressure, dirt, damp, heat, insects, and the social organization of a shelter with materials close at hand. 200,000 years later, a sensor-rich mattress addresses some of the same problems through mines, factories, code, electricity, and global trade. Between them lies no straight line. Ancient Egyptian joiners built raised frames while later millions slept on mats by choice or necessity. A heated masonry platform can outperform a spring mattress in a cold house designed around it. A hammock can cool better than foam. A hospital bed can save a life and prevent rest through alarms. Beds reveal class because they consume space. The finest filling means little without a secure room. Curtains, private corridors, guest chambers, and climate control enlarge the protected zone around a wealthy sleeper. Crowding compresses it until strangers share breath. They reveal labor because they must be made and remade. Grass is gathered. Reeds are split. Wool is washed. Cotton is picked, spun, woven, sewn, and laundered. Wood is cut. Iron is cast. Springs are coiled. Foam is mixed. Sheets are stripped at checkout and restored before another guest arrives. They reveal power because someone decides when another person may lie down. The enslaver shortens rest. The factory bell summons. The prison light remains on. The shelter closes its doors. The nurse raises a rail. The child asks for one more story. The dying person asks not to be moved. They reveal culture because comfort is learned in company. Families share platforms, mats, rooms, hammocks, or mattresses according to kinship and place. Guests are given the warm side, the fresh sheet, the best airflow, or the only bed. Hospitality turns material into welcome. They reveal health without offering a simple prescription. Clean, dry bedding can protect skin and sleep. Crowding spreads some infections. Bed bugs cause distress without proving dirt. Too much softness or hardness affects bodies differently. Rest depends on safety, schedule, noise, temperature, care, and freedom as much as on a surface. The bed is where public systems become private sensation. Housing policy becomes the wall beside the pillow. Wage policy becomes the hour of return. Energy policy becomes nighttime heat. Trade becomes cotton against skin. War becomes a cotton against skin. It is also where the private becomes public. Birth adds a citizen. Illness summons institutions. Dreams enter literature. Sex enters law and religion. A ruler's bed becomes ceremony. An empty bed becomes a measure of loss. At night, these meanings recede. The sleeper adjusts a pillow, turns toward or away from another body, pulls a covering closer, and stops attending to the object beneath. A good bed becomes almost imperceptible. That disappearance is the goal and the mystery. Craftspeople, farmers, factory workers, housekeepers, nurses, and family members create conditions in which another person can surrender awareness for a while. Their work holds the unconscious body. There is tenderness in the oldest act, choosing a safer patch, clearing it, bringing something soft, and making room for someone else. Beds later became property, theater, merchandise, discipline, and data. They never lost that first possibility. Now the room settles. The woven cord takes the body's weight. Air rests between wool fibers. A platform releases heat stored from the evening fire. Curtains quiet the draft. Beyond another wall, a hotel worker finishes the last room. A nurse turns a patient. A parent lifts a sleeping child. The history of beds is the history beneath history, supporting bodies while the visible world pauses. Empires, markets, families, and journeys all return eventually to a horizontal place. For a few hours, if safety and fortune allow, the body asks not for progress or status, but for enough warmth, enough air, and permission to let go.